Come closer. Come closer. Let us discuss the 2013 Chicago Blackhawks. They went through Minnesota in the first round in 5. They went through Detroit in the second round in 7. LA in the third round in 5. And then Boston. It's an impressive run. It's an impressive run. Detroit taking 7 shows that Detroit wasn't ready to let go of that dynasty. That guys like Zetterberg and Datsuk were still at the top. The finals where I get gutted. Boston went on a nice long run. And Chicago won game 1 and they lost games 2 and 3. And I went to work after Boston won game 3, 2-0, and I was crowing a lot. And they're not playing the Canucks now, they're playing my other team. My other team's not going to choke this one out. Hawks are going down. This is why my dislike of the Hawks extends past this date. They won game 4 in overtime 6-5, and I knew there was a problem. And then they won games 5 and 6, 3-1 and 3-2. This was a hell of an impressive team, and the funny thing is, Corey Crawford reminds me of Marc-Andre Fleury. And to some extent, Chris Osgood. And if we're going to talk about underrated goaltenders in playoffs, Crawford belongs there. 1.84 goals against, 16 and 7, plays every minute of those playoffs, 932 save percentage. And every year I hear somebody talking smack about Corey Crawford. Crawford's not quite good enough. Crawford's not this, he's not that. The Hawks benefited from a 48-game regular season. And here's the problem. The 48-game regular season showed us what the NHL could be. That the marathon of 82 games seems more fair and seems to weed out some of the more non-contender teams, the ones that probably shouldn't be there. A 48-game schedule probably allows a team to get on a hot streak and make the playoffs. But you know what? The amount of energy that Chicago had left in the playoffs and how entertaining these playoffs were coming out of another lockout. Really, really impressive. There is something to be said for a shorter schedule. And I would be fine with it, but the NHL wouldn't. And then ticket prices would almost double with a 48-game schedule. So that's not going to happen. But Kane had 55 points, Taves had 48, Hossa 31. There's Saad with 17, or 27, Keith with 27. I'm looking over here, I'm cheating. Brian Bickle 23, Victor Stahlberg 23, Brent Seabrook with 20. In the playoffs, Kane leads the way again. He, of course, wins the Conn Smythe with his 19 points, 23 games. Brian Bickle was 17. Again, Bickle got a big contract. And his playoff play is why. Sharp, 16 points. Hossa, 16 points. Taves, 14. Keith, 13. Handzus, 11. And Frolik, 10. The amount of depth that Chicago had led to them being included in one of the magazines I have on the 25 greatest teams of all time. And the controversy starts right off the bat. Right away it says, can we really put a team that's played 48 games on this list? And they went through why and how dominant they were. And it was an insanely dominant season they had over 48 games. And I think you can. I think you can make an argument that this is one of the best teams that's ever played hockey. Of the 3 Stanley Cup champions that Chicago's had, this is, while the 2010 team had a very impressive run, top to bottom, this might be their best roster. And again, this is after the 2010 purge. This is after they lost guys like Ladd and Byfuglien, and they got back to it and they got the cup back. It's impressive. And the Stanley Cup final against Boston, it hurt. If Boston had somehow won that series and won their second Stanley Cup in 3 years, it would have given me a certain level of of pride in a team I cheered for that I've never had, because I've never watched a team that I could argue, well, they're almost a dynasty. I can argue two one-offs, Boston and that Dallas jersey I'm looking at right there. It was close in the final. The series with LA, out of 5, Chicago played really, really well. So did LA. And at that point, it looked like it was going to be Chicago and LA in the conference final every year. They were just the best two teams in the West, and there didn't seem to be a whole lot of big name competition to those two marquee teams. So that rivalry never quite got as heated as, say, like Detroit and Colorado, but I get the feeling that they may not have exchanged Christmas cards after the Stanley Cup playoff was done. There are a lot of people who don't like Duncan Keith for the way he plays hockey. I'm not a big fan of some of the way he plays hockey, but Hall of Famer, sure. Kane, yep. Taves, yep. Hossa, absolutely. And we'll see where Corey Crawford ends up at the end of his career. How many years does Crawford play as the starter, and how many more times can Crawford get to the top of that mountain? I really, really still, to this day, like Corey Crawford a lot, and I don't think he gets full credit for this run or for how well Chicago's played since he became their starter. Yeah, it was quite the run. It wasn't as dominant as the year before with the Kings. Certainly, they didn't wipe out every team they played. But again, other than against Detroit, they didn't really get a huge challenge from anybody. And when you look at it, Game 7 against Detroit, they went to overtime to win that one 2-1. That's as scary as anything got for them. After that, it was relatively just business as usual for them. And it says a lot for just how good they were, how good they are. And again, like I said with LA last night, results like this are why I will never count out the Chicago Blackhawks as a Stanley Cup contender. I don't care how many years they've had failure in the playoffs. I don't care that they've had 2 straight years of going out in the first round. I still view them as a contender. As long as this core is together, as long as you've got Kane, Taves, Keith, and Crawford, I will view them as a contender. And everything else you put around them is going to be pretty damn good. And they bring back Saad and Sharp this year, so we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.